Hey there. Welcome to the Two People Talking podcast.
Grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea. Get comfortable.
And let's get started.
Hey everyone. Welcome back to Two People Talking podcast. I'm Olivia, and I'm here with Mike today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back. It's nice to be here.
Today we're tackling something that I think everyone relates to, especially this time of year. We're talking about spring and waiting for spring, and whether it's actually just about the weather or if there's something deeper going on. So if you're listening and you feel that little spark when the days get longer, please do subscribe and throw a like on this one. We genuinely love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Spring is a big deal for a lot of people, so I'm excited to dig into this.
Right, so here's the thing. I've noticed that people around me start talking about spring like it's going to save their lives. And I'm being serious about this. It's like they're counting down the days in January or February, and I'm thinking, is it really just about the weather getting warmer, or is something else going on?
I think there's definitely something else going on. I mean, winter is long, right? And it's not just about the temperature, it's about daylight. When you're stuck indoors and you're not seeing much sun, it does something to your mood. It's not even necessarily noticeable at first.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. Have you heard about SAD, seasonal affective disorder?
Yeah, of course. It's a real thing, though I remember thinking it was kind of made up when I first heard about it. Like, people just being sad because it's cold, and then suddenly they're over it when the sun comes out. But the more I think about it, the more sense it makes. It's not just people being dramatic.
Exactly. It's not people being dramatic. It's about light exposure and how that affects your serotonin levels. I was reading about this recently, and apparently it's not that uncommon. Some people really struggle with it, and for them, waiting for spring isn't just, wanting to go outside and have a picnic. It's almost like waiting for a switch to flip in their brain.
That's a good way to put it. So when you say not that uncommon, do you mean like a lot of people deal with this?
More than you'd think. I read that it affects around 3 to 5% of people quite severely, but then there's a bigger group that has milder symptoms, darker mood, less energy, sleeping more. And the thing is, most people don't connect it to the season at first. They just think they're being lazy or that something's wrong with them.
That's the thing that gets me. You go through the winter thinking you're just not motivated, or you're in a slump, and then spring arrives and suddenly you're back to normal and you realize, oh, right, it was the season all along. That's kind of wild when you think about it.
Totally. But here's where I'm curious about your perspective. Are you the kind of person who really notices the difference between seasons? Or are you more indifferent to it?
Honestly, I'm probably more indifferent than most people. I know that's not the typical answer, but I don't find winter that depressing. I kind of like it sometimes. The quiet, the darkness, staying in. But I do notice that a lot of people around me, especially closer to March, they start getting really excited about spring, and I'm like, we could be here for another month or two. Why are you already planning your garden?
But see, I think that's actually interesting because it shows that it's not universal. Some people are really wired to respond to seasonal changes and others aren't. But I do think that people who say they're indifferent to winter, they might actually be suppressing something without realizing it. Like, they might be going through the motions.
Maybe. But I think some people are genuinely just less sensitive to those kinds of changes. I have a friend who literally doesn't care what season it is. He's consistent in his mood and his energy year-round. It's kind of annoying, actually, because then when everyone else is complaining about winter, he's just like, it's fine.
Okay, I'll give you that. Not everyone is the same. But let's talk about the actual signs that spring is coming. Because that's the thing that gets people excited, right? It's not just the calendar turning to March. It's the actual physical signs.
Oh yeah, those are cool. The first time you see a robin or something like that, or you notice the grass is actually greening up instead of being totally dead and brown. Those little things hit different.
Exactly. And it's interesting because those signs are actually kind of subtle if you're not paying attention. Like the way the light changes. Even if the temperature hasn't warmed up yet, the light becomes different. It's brighter somehow, or different in color. And that's happening because of the angle of the sun, right? But most people don't think about that. They just feel it.
It's almost like your body knows before your brain does. I remember last spring, I was sitting at my desk in the morning and I suddenly realized I wasn't turning on the lights as early as I usually did. The sun was coming up earlier and I hadn't even consciously noticed it happening.
That's such a good example. And then there are the sounds too. You start hearing birds again that you haven't heard in months. The soundscape changes, and smells, actually. There's definitely a different smell to the air when spring is coming.
For sure. I think it's often people clearing their gardens or doing things outside, so there's more activity, but also the soil itself probably smells different.
Yes, it does. It's more earthy. Anyway, so we've got all these subtle signs, and then people are like, okay, spring is coming. What am I going to do with this? And suddenly, everyone's making plans. Spring bucket lists, or whatever you want to call them.
Oh man, spring bucket lists. I feel like people get really ambitious about that. Everyone's like, this spring I'm going to travel, I'm going to start a new hobby, I'm going to finally fix up my apartment. And then what happens? Summer comes around and they haven't done half of it.
That's the thing, though. Is it that people are bad at following through, or is the expectation just unrealistic? Like, do you think people actually believe they're going to do all these things, or is it more like a fantasy?
I think it's a bit of both. I think people genuinely want to do these things and they're genuinely excited about it. But there's also this fantasy element where they're imagining this perfect version of their spring where they have all this time and energy and motivation. And then real life gets in the way.
But here's what's interesting to me. Why is it specifically spring that makes people want to do all this? Why not make plans in August or November?
I think it's because there's something about renewal that comes with spring. It's like a natural reset button. You've been through this dark, difficult period, and now there's light and warmth and growth happening everywhere. It makes you feel like you should be doing something new, too.
That's it. It's the metaphor, right? Everything's coming back to life, so you want to come back to life too. You want to renew yourself. And that's why people talk about spring as a second chance. It's like New Year's resolutions, but with better timing because nature's literally doing it around you.
I like that. So, spring, spring me instead of new year, new me. Though I still think a lot of people use it as an excuse to procrastinate on their goals. They're like, oh, I'll start when spring comes. And then spring comes and they're still not ready.
Fair point. But I think there might be something genuine about the timing too. Like, if you're actually struggling with seasonal depression or just low motivation in winter, waiting until spring isn't procrastination. It's actually a smart choice because you're working with your body's natural rhythms instead of against them.
Okay, that's fair. That's actually a good perspective. I hadn't thought about it that way.
So now I'm curious about something else. I think the experience of waiting for spring might be different depending on where you live. Like in a city versus somewhere more rural.
Oh, totally. I grew up in a pretty rural area, and spring was a huge deal because you could actually see things changing on a daily basis. Trees budding, flowers coming up, animals appearing again. It was very tangible.
Right, so there's actual change happening in nature that you can witness.
Exactly. And then I lived in a city for a while, and spring felt more muted somehow. Like, sure, the weather got warmer and you could spend more time outside, but you're not really seeing nature come back to life because you're surrounded by concrete and buildings.
But I'd argue that in a city, spring means something different. It means the parks fill up with people. Cafes put tables outside. There's this energy that comes back to urban spaces. So it's still renewal, but it's human renewal rather than natural renewal.
That's a good point, actually. It's less about nature and more about community and activity returning. More people outside, more events happening, more reasons to leave your apartment.
Which actually matters for people who are dealing with loneliness or isolation in winter. In a city, that's a real thing. You can be surrounded by people and still feel really isolated when everyone's hunkered down indoors.
Yeah, and the cost of living in cities is high enough without spending winter months basically paying for an apartment and then not leaving it because it's too cold or dark. So spring actually feels like you're finally getting your money's worth out of being there.
That's funny, but also kind of true. Okay, so let me ask you something else. You have any childhood memories of spring that still stick with you?
Oh, for sure. I remember being let outside after being cooped up for months, and it felt like freedom, you know? And I remember the smell of the grass specifically, like freshly mowed grass in late April or May. That's such a specific memory, but it hits me every spring.
That's so vivid. And I think a lot of people have those memories. There's something about spring as a kid that feels different. More hopeful, maybe.
Definitely hopeful. There's also the fact that as a kid, spring means your school year's ending soon, so there's excitement about that too. Summer break is coming, freedom is coming.
Right? And that might be part of why spring feels so significant as adults too. We've built this expectation around it since we were kids. Spring equals freedom, renewal, a break from difficulty. And then we grow up and we still feel that, even if we're not actually getting a summer break anymore.
Wow, that's actually kind of sad when you think about it. We're chasing this feeling from childhood that's not really relevant to our adult lives anymore.
It's not sad, I think it's just human. We're drawn to those seasonal markers because they've always meant something to us. But I do think there's something interesting about how it shapes our behavior. Like, does spring actually change what we do? Or do we just think it does?
I think it genuinely changes things. People have more energy in spring, right? That's not just a placebo. People are more likely to exercise, to go outside, to be social. That's not imaginary.
True. The light does affect your circadian rhythm and your hormone levels, so there's real biological change happening. It's not just a mental thing. But then there's also the cultural element. In spring, there are more events happening, more reasons to go out. So is it the season changing your behavior, or is it the social environment changing?
Probably both. Your body is responding to the season, but also society has these expectations and activities tied to spring. They're all feeding into the same effect.
Which is why spring feels so much more impactful than other seasons in terms of the way people talk about it. It's this perfect storm of biological, psychological, and cultural factors all pointing the same direction.
Okay, so here's what I'm wondering though. If people are banking so much hope on spring, what happens if spring doesn't deliver? Like, what if the weather's bad, or you don't actually follow through on your plans, or you realize that spring didn't magically fix your life?
That's a real thing that happens. And I think that's when people get disappointed. They've been looking forward to something for months, and it doesn't live up to the hype. But I also think that's not spring's fault. That's more about us putting too much weight on a season to fix our problems.
Right? Like, spring can't cure depression or fix a bad job or a struggling relationship. It can give you a boost, but it's not a cure-all.
Exactly. And I think the healthier way to think about it is spring is an opportunity. It's a nudge from nature saying, okay, it's time to try something new. But you still have to do the work. The season doesn't do it for you.
That's actually a more balanced way to look at it. Rather than waiting for spring to change your life, you use spring as a motivation to help you change your own life.
Yeah, like it's a tool you can use, not a savior you're waiting for. And I think when you approach it that way, spring actually does feel really meaningful. It's a partnership between you and the season, not you hoping the season will fix things.
I like that. That actually makes me feel a bit more hopeful about spring, which is funny because I don't usually care that much about seasons.
See, this is why I love talking to you about this. You come at it from a different angle, and it makes me reconsider how I think about things. Like, I've definitely been guilty of romanticizing spring too much, especially when I'm in a low mood in winter.
But also being aware of that is half the battle, right? If you know you're prone to that, you can kind of plan for it. You can set realistic expectations instead of waiting for a magic season to arrive.
And you can also be easier on yourself if winter is genuinely difficult for you. Instead of thinking you're failing or you're not motivated enough, you can acknowledge that your brain chemistry is working against you, and that's normal.
Which brings us back to SAD and all of that. I think the fact that more people are talking about it openly is really good, because for ages, people just suffered in silence thinking they were weak or lazy.
Absolutely. There's less stigma now, which is great. And I think there's also more tools available. Light therapy is a real thing. Vitamin D supplements, getting outside more. People have options now.
Yeah, and knowing about it is half the battle. If you understand why winter is hard for you, you can actually do something about it instead of just waiting and hoping.
Right. So maybe the best way to think about waiting for spring isn't as something passive where you're just gritting your teeth and getting through winter. It's more about being proactive, acknowledging the season, taking care of yourself, and then when spring does arrive, you're not relying on it to fix you because you've already been working on it.
That's really good advice, actually. And it takes the pressure off spring, too. Spring can just be a nice season where you do stuff you enjoy rather than your life raft in the darkness.
Exactly. Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've gone from sad to childhood memories to city versus countryside. Is there anything else you want to touch on about spring?
I think we got the main stuff. But I'm curious, what are you planning to do when spring actually arrives? Do you have a bucket list?
I do, but I've been trying to be realistic about it. I want to spend more time outside, probably start running again, meet up with friends more. Nothing too ambitious, but just trying to do more of the things that make me feel good.
That sounds nice and manageable. I'm probably just going to keep doing what I do and maybe take advantage of the fact that people are more keen to go out and socialize. So, I'll probably spend more time with people.
See, that's still a plan. You're just not calling it a bucket list.
True. I never really thought of it as something I was planning, but I guess I am. Spring hits and I know I'm going to want to see people more. So in a way, I'm already preparing for that mentally.
Exactly. So you do have that spring thing happening. You're just not as dramatic about it as other people.
I'll take that.
All right, well, I think that's a nice place to wrap up. Thanks for thinking through all of this with me. It's been really good to talk about the psychology and the culture around spring rather than just the weather.
Yeah, it was good. And honestly, this conversation has made me appreciate spring a bit more than I usually do. So thanks for that.
Aw, I'm glad. And thanks to everyone listening. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us ramble about seasons and life and all of that. Let us know what you think about spring in the comments, and we'll catch you in the next one.
See you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to Two People Talking Podcast. We really appreciate you spending time with us.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel and give us a like. It honestly means a lot.
And if you have any thoughts or reactions, drop them in the comments. We love hearing from you.
We'll be back with another episode soon. Thanks again for listening.